All right, let's take a look at another sign here. And I'm going to start this little lesson by describing first the words and grammar that you see in this line. And I'll do that by describing or just telling you what the meaning of each of these words are. Noon means snow. And actually, this is one of the difficult things about learning any language. Noon, you'll probably know, also means an eye or eyes. And it's very difficult to know, well, if you see this word noon, is this referring to snow or is it referring to eyes? A lot of times people that are learning Korean, they don't realize that we see the same thing in English for sure, but probably in any language. But I only really have experience in English and Korean. Like for example, you could say, I I plant a plant, and you could be talking about the verb of to plant or the object plant, or you could also talk about plant as in planting your foot. And it's all these different meanings for the same sound. And anyway, snow and I both sound the same in Korean, and they both sound like noon. B means rain, rain. And one thing that's interesting for these words, snow and rain in English, is that snow refers to the noun of the thing falling from the sky, and rain the same thing. Uh, but that there are actually verbs as well in English. So yeah, I could say it is raining, or it rained, or it will rain, or it is snowing, or it snowed, or it will snow. And I can conjugate these as actual verbs, or I can actually make them verbs to rain or to snow in it. And if I conjugate this as it rained, or it's raining, or it will rain, or anything I can do, anything that I could do with conjugating these verbs in English. Now in Korean, rain and snow will never act as verbs. There is no verb for rain and to snow in Korean. The only thing they have is a noun that means snow and a noun that means rain. Now, if you want to say that it is raining or snowing, and actually a few other weather patterns, but we'll just talk about raining and snowing right now. For example, if I want to say it is raining or it's raining, I would say 비가 while. And there's a bunch, I could conjugate this a bunch of different ways. I just happen to conjugate it this way. And basically what I'm doing, this O here is actually the same O that we see here. And the base form of this word is oda. And oda means to come. To come. Now what I have here is I have a conjugated form of oda, and I basically I just add this to it, and yo makes it a little bit more polite. But if I was going to translate this literally, it would translate to sort of saying, rain is coming, and again, I would never say that in English, but that would translate to, it is raining. It is raining. And literally, again, like I said, because they don't have a verb that encompasses the meaning of raining and snowing, they have to say, rain is coming. And in English, we, of course, would translate to, it is raining. And it's the same thing for snow. I could say the same sentence. I would say 눈이 와요. And of course that would mean it is snowing, and that would literally translate to snow is coming. And I can put anything I want after oda. It doesn't have to be this regular conjugation. I could say if I wanted to do it in the past tense, I could say 비가 왔어요. And that would say it rained in the past, and it's currently not raining anymore. Anyways, so that's what this O is doing here. Again, the base form which I showed on the other side is oda, and it means to come. And it has many meanings because it's a very, very basic verb, both in English and in Korean. So it has many meanings or many functions, all sort of encompassing this meaning of to come. And I'll talk about this little guy here in a second. But this part here is more important, or I can't really talk about this until I talk about this thing. So what this means, it's actually a noun. I'll write that first. It's a noun, and it refers to some sort of time. And it's very hard to describe or give you a perfect definition of what this would translate to, because there is actually many things that it could translate to depending on how it's used. But if I was going to sort of think of some way to describe it, it's referring to some sort of time. And well, what time are we referring to? Well, it actually depends on what's before it. And 때 is actually a special noun, and I talk about many different types of these special nouns in my lessons. For example, you might know the special noun chok to sort of mean experience, or you might know the special noun su to refer to ability. For example, I could use chok in saying 한적 없다 to say I've never done that before, and I can say 수 for 할 수 있다, which refers to I can do that. Another one is 지, which refers to, well, it's kind of hard to give you a meaning for that, but I could say something like 안 한지 오래됐다 to refer to, oh, I haven't done that in a while. But anyways, all these nouns, 지, 적, and 수, and actually in my previous video lesson I talked about a similar one, 쪽. All of these are these special nouns, and I call them special nouns because they can't just be used on their own. There always has to be something before it to sort of give it its real meaning that it's going to have. And I'm going to write this just something before, and I'll even write down to describe this. And it's actually the same for all of these. So I could say something before to describe this, or something before to describe this, or describe this, or describe this, or describe this. And the meaning of this, if I was going to translate them, if this or this or this or this or this is in a sentence, it's very hard to translate these nouns, and all of these 5 things here are nouns. It's very hard to translate them if I don't know what this thing is. Okay, now something before to describe. Well, what can I put before this to describe it? I'll just give you 2 examples of different types of things. One thing you could do is you can put a noun, and then de. So it's sort of like having noun, because as I said before, de is a noun in itself. So for example, I can put 대학교, which, and that means university, and I can put de after that. And that would sort of, and if you translate both these, it would say university time. And you would use this to talk about, of course, when you were in university or something like that. Another thing you could do is have a verb or an adjective, and then de. But if you're going to do this, you can't just have a verb, for example. You can't just put oda, which is a verb, and then immediately followed by de. That's ridiculous. What you need to do is you need to sort of add something to this verb or to the adjective, depending on, actually it's the same rule for both. In this situation, there's a slightly different rule on a verb and an adjective, but if I'm adding this, it's actually the same rule. I can't just put a verb here, oda, and then follow it by de. I need to sort of add something to this. And what I need to add, if I want to talk about a general time of coming, in this case, and in this case it's rain coming, I have to put either this if the stem ends in a vowel, and oda does end in a vowel, the stem, or this if the stem ends in a consonant, and this one doesn't end in a consonant, so I wouldn't add this. But for example, if I was going to use the verb 먹다, I would add that one, and I would turn it into 먹을 때. But anyways, I would add this, and then I would add this thing to that, and all in all, what I would get is 올 때. And what this was referring to is, if I was just talking about, again, oda means to come, and it's the time in which something comes. And well, I haven't given you enough context to talk about what is coming, but in this case, what's happening is the time in which the rain or the snow comes or is coming or something like that. And again, that's illogical in English, but the way I would translate that in English better would be when it rains, or like I said, literally if I was going to translate that, it's the time in which, or the time that rain or snow comes, or it will come, or is coming. But again, I would translate that much more naturally to when it rains or snows. One other thing here is, you'll notice that there's, in my writing here, I actually have a space. I have a space here, and I have a space here, and I thought that's incorrect, but I also did include a space. But here you don't see a space, and here you notice that there's no particle attached to be. Here I say pika, but here it's just be or de. Officially, and if you're ever going to write this in, for example, like a book report, or I don't know, some sort of report, I can't imagine you'd ever need to really write this in a formal situation, but you never know. you would want to write ka, the subject particle, on p, and you would want to put then of course a space between pika and yo, or pika and oda, and then you would want to put a space between these two here, because de is a separate noun, and what I've created here is completely separate from this, and it's actually completely separate from this. So what this should actually say is, I'll even write it down. What it should say is 비가, and I can put snow before it, but I'll just leave it as 비가 올 때. And notice that I have a space here and I have a space here. Now, I don't want to say that this is incorrect, because this is kind of how people would say it. I feel like the spaces are very correct, but on signs, I feel like that it would appear like this a lot, even though I think the most official way to write it would be like this. I talk about this use of de, and I talk about how you can describe de with either a noun before it or a verb or an adjective before it in this lesson here. We're lesson 42, and I talk about it here, the simple uses where you could have a noun followed by a de, a noun, a de, and a noun, a de, and you're referring to that time of that noun. You could also talk about it where if you want to put a verb, in this case I have 먹다, right before de, you're talking about day, the time that this thing happened. And as you can see, the time in which this thing happened would be translated to when I eat. Or if this was in the past, you could say when I ate. Now, this next line here, this again, I always talk about the spacing here. That's one word there, and that's another word here. And there should be a space between those, but on signs you often see people omit the spaces for whatever reason. Before I even say what this word means, I want to draw your attention to this adjective down here. 미끄럽다. I'll write it. 미끄럽다. 미끄럽다 means to be slippery. To be slippery. And there's not much special happening here. All I have is 씁니다. 씁니다. Being attached to that to make it more formal. Instead of having just ta as the stem, I have 씁니다 as the stem, and that just makes it a little bit more formal. And if you look at this, you can sort of see, well, it actually looks quite similar. I have this, again, it's 미끄럽다, 미끄럽, and here it's 미끄럼. And you say, well, they must be very, very similar to each other. And actually, 미끄럼 is very hard to translate, just like a lot of words. But 미끄럼, I'm running out of space over here. I should have planned this a little bit better, but 미끄럼 actually means then whatever the noun form of to be slippery would be, well, that's what 미끄럼 means. And it's very hard to think about what the noun form of to be slippery would be, but I would sort of say it's something like slipperiness. And it should be a P there. Slipperiness. I don't even know if that's a word in English, but I feel like if I was going to somehow think about what the noun form of this would be, I would say slipperiness. If you see this letter here, you might be thinking, well, the reason why this is a noun and the reason why this is a noun form of this adjective is because you've added this to it. You might be thinking that because you've probably seen in my lessons or maybe even in my videos that if you add this to a verb or an adjective, you actually get the noun form of that verb or an adjective. And that's true, but that's actually not what's happening here. And actually adding this to 미끄럽다 actually would not get you this. That's not how it actually forms. You would actually get 미끄러움. That's actually what you would get, not 미끄럼. So you might be thinking that the reason why this is the noun form of to be slippery is because this is added to it, and that's what this letter is for. But that's actually not the case. 미끄럼 is actually a word in and within itself, and it looks similar to this, but it's actually not formed as a result of adding this to that. If you're curious about how this works and how this can be added to verbs or adjectives to get the noun form of that verb or adjective, I highly suggest you read this lesson 29, where I talk about adding that particular thing and how I can use that to change verbs or adjectives into nouns, and I talk about that all right here. Now, we're almost done here, so I know that this means slipperiness. 주의하다 is a verb that sort of means to be careful And it's actually more of that. It's almost to be careful or cautious, or to take caution of, to take caution. And what we have here, we just have the noun form of that, because we don't have the hada, we just have the noun form. So it's whatever the noun form of that would be, which would be, I guess, you could just translate simply to caution. Caution. And that, therefore, if you're looking at this, it's sort of saying careful or caution or take care of, be careful of this slipperiness. Finally, the last word on this sign that we don't know is just this padak here, and there's nothing special about this. Padak just means floor, floor. And if I put everything together, what I get is, I haven't really talked about this dot, but this dot is basically just meaning or, and just saying this or this. And it's not really something you see in a lot of Korean writing, but you do see it on signs sometimes just to simplify it. There is a way to say or in Korean, but this is, instead of saying that, they're just using this dot. This is saying when it, and if I say it literally, when the snow or the rain comes, and more specifically and better translated to English, that would be when it rains or snows, cautious or be careful, take caution of the slipperiness. Because, and it doesn't say because here, but because the floor is slippery. And then up here, of course, you can see this jui again, which you know means to be careful or to take caution. Well, that was fun. I hope you learned a lot. Like our sign videos? You can see all of our Korean sign explanation videos by clicking the link here. We also have a ton of videos showing various aspects of Korean culture, tourist areas, cuisine, and everyday life. You can go there by clicking this link here. You can also subscribe to our channel by clicking this button.